So we are starting Unit 2, which is all about verbs. So if you think about the way we're going to work our progress through our textbook, the author starts off by presenting the patterns for us, patterns 1 through 10, and also giving us the form and structure classes. And we realize that the 10-sentence patterns are basically structured around our form classes, meaning that we have nouns, verbs, adjectives, and occasionally an adverb like a pattern 1. So now the author is going to then take apart each individual form class in detail. So the first one we're going to start off with is the verb. So Unit 2 is a short unit. It's all about verbs, everything you've ever wanted to know about verbs, but really didn't really care or were afraid to ask. So let's get into what we're going to call this the logic of a seemingly illogical English verb. When you conjugate verbs in foreign languages, like I said, I took Spanish when I was in school, and conjugating verbs in Spanish is so easy. Of course, there are some irregular verbs, but for the most part, it's really slick. And I think when you look at the English verb, people always think, like, how in the world are our verbs created? Because all the other languages are so easy to understand, but ours is weird. And it's actually not true. It's actually very logical. It seems illogical, but it's actually a really interesting system the way our verbs are written. So that's what we're going to focus on. So in this unit, one thing we're going to look at is what we're going to call the verb expansion rule. And it's going to help us explain tense and voice and mood and a number of qualities of verbs. So that's where we're heading. So first things first, when we talk about verbs, there are actually 5 different forms a verb can show up in. Now, you've probably written these down already when we talked about form and structure classes, but just to reiterate, we have, once again, the same language that we're all going to use. We have what we call the base form. And this is what we would call eventually the present tense, but this is the base form, what we would call the infinitive form. This is the if we said that it's very basics without being conjugated, words like laugh or eat. That's the base form. And then we have an S form, which we could say laughs or eats. And we would eventually, we're going to call that the third person present singular. We also have an ED form. Now, not every verb literally takes an ED. So we can take laugh and turn it into laughed, but there's no such word as eated. And so you have to say the word ate. So it's the ED form, even though it doesn't really have an ED added to it. But that would be our past tense. We also have the ING form. We can have laughing and eating. We call those the present participle form. And lastly, we have the EN form, which is what we call the past participle. And so not every word takes an EN. So eat can turn into eaten. Drive can turn into driven. But laugh is not laughing. If you're dating someone who's using the word laughing, get out of that relationship. But we would use the word laughed. And so even though it doesn't end in ED, we still consider that to be the EN form, which can be confusing because you have laughed and laughed, one ED and one EN form. We're going to find the EN form is used with words like have or has or had. So have laughed or had laughed is how we'll actually use the EN form. Anyway, when we're talking about verbs, we also have to consider the fact that we can also have auxiliaries, right? Once again, helping verbs. And so these helping verbs help us get into some of these later structures. So like when I'm using an ING verb or I'm using an EN form, I have to have a helper to get into it. So if I couldn't just simply say eaten, I have to say something like has eaten, like the grammar teacher has eaten the donuts as bribery. I can't just simply say clogging. I'm going to have some kind of helper to get into that ING. So the cholesterol will be clogging his arteries. And all the author's proving in this early part of chapter 3 is as the linguists are trying to figure out, like, what's the pattern of an English verb, they start realizing, okay, some of these later ones, like an EN or an ING form, have helpers where some of the other ones don't have helpers. So once they start studying the patterns enough, they realize it's actually quite logical. There's a mathematical equation that we use to create verbs, and we call that equation the verb expansion rule. So this is the verb expansion rule. If you're going to take notes, the most important thing probably is going to be sitting down here, which is this verb expansion rule here. But if you look at your worksheet, you'll see on your worksheet that you have in front of you also has this exact same rule written down for you, and it's going to break it down. So what's happening is they're saying once we take a verb, which we call a predicating verb, and actually if we break it apart, it's auxiliary. If it has one and its main verb, we have this structure here. You're going to notice some weird code words here. Some things have parentheses, some things don't. One thing we found in the English verb is every verb has to have this thing which we're going to call tense, and this thing down here, which is the main verb. But the things that are in parentheses are optional. That's why we're going to put parentheses around them. Let me break this down for you a little easier. So first thing, that T means tense. There are actually only 2 tenses in the English language, present and past. There is really no such thing as the future tense. Future is more of a mood, but it's not really a tense at all. So there's no such thing as the future. It's kind of how stupid, but it really isn't. Every time you think something's the future, by the time you get there, it's actually the present. So we only have present and past, but every verb can be broken down to either its present or its past form. After that, we have this M. M stands for modal. When you get to the upper levels of some of your foreign language classes, you'll maybe hear more of this. But a modal is a type of helper, all right? And so they oftentimes come in pairs. Excuse me. There's both a present and a past form of a modal. So I've listed them that way. So this is the present and the past. So will and then would, shall and then should, can and then could, may and might. Except for the last two, there is no past tense of must. There is no past tense of ought to. So there's only a present tense of those. But these are our modals. And then we have, one last note. A modal we're going to find actually creates mood for us. So it's going to help us create what we call the indicative mood, the conditional mood, the subjunctive mood. I have no idea why I have a random comma here. That's just really bad grammar on my part. Yeah, great, Marsh. All right. And then we have a possibility of having have. And if we use the word have, en is going to be traveling with it, as I'll show you here very soon. If I have an ing word, we're going to find the word be is going to be traveling with it. All right, so I'm going to repeat that one more time. If I use the word have or a form of have, like has or had, en is going to travel with it. And if I have an ing in my verb, be is going to travel with it. But once again, you notice the parentheses, which means you don't have to have any of these three middle things at all. You're purely optional. What you do have to have is you have to have a tense, and at the very end, you have to have your main verb. So what I want to do is I want to do two things today. I want to focus on taking a verb and breaking it down. So we're going to deconstruct the verb, and then we're also going to take the worksheet and we're going to reconstruct verbs. But once again, we're going to be almost making like mathematical equations. So I'm going to walk through some examples with you, and I hope this works. All right, so we have this first verb, which is going to be, I have hidden the donuts from you. So let's take apart have hidden. Let's show mathematically how have hidden actually comes from the verb expansion rule. So I'm going to shift over here to a pen, see if this works for us. All right, so the first thing we're going to notice is in my verb expansion rule, I have to use a tense. All right, so here's my tense. And so my tense is either present or past. So it's the tense of the very first word. Even though hidden is my main verb, it's the tense of the first word. So have is present. So I'm going to write the word present here. And then I'm going to put a little plus sign. All right, just as a side note, in case you don't know, I'm up here. Have and has are present. Had is past. Okay, so there's present because of this word. Next thing, what we're going to do is we're just going to work methodically down this verb expansion rule. So I've done the first one. Check. Next one, modal. Is there a modal? So I'm just going to add the modal to my list down here. Well, if I look down here, I go from have to hidden. There's no will, there's no shall, there's no can, there's no may, there's no must, there's no ought to. There is no modal. So I don't need to add it. So I can move on. Don't need to add it. Next, I look and say, hey, do you have any form of have? It doesn't matter if it's have or has or had. If you have any of those three, you have to add in this entire structure. And I do. I have the word have, so I have to add in that structure. So I'm going to add in have plus en. All right. Next, we'll give them a little check mark to be consistent. Next, do I have anything that ends in ing? It doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter if it's here or there or anywhere. As long as one of those two words have ing, I have to add in this whole structure. But there isn't. There is no ing. So I'm done with you. Once again, these are three options. So sometimes you'll skip them. Like I skipped the modal. I skipped the be plus ing. I didn't need it. Lastly is my main verb. You have to have a main verb. That's always the last word, which is down here of hidden. But I'm going to put my main verb in its base form. So here's my little plus sign. And now I'm going to take hidden and break it back to its base form. So at the base of it is the verb hide. I'm not sure what happened there. There we go. So now what I've created is I've created this mathematical equation, present plus have plus en plus hide should give me have hidden. So let's think about it logically. This is the way the author does it. I might even change colors. Let's get crazy. You know what I mean? Let's bring in yellow. All right, so here we go. So take it like this. The present of have is have. These little tags, like en or ing, they always go with the next word. So en goes with the next word. What's en plus hide? Hidden. So therefore, present plus have plus en plus hide is have hidden. And that's how we break down a verb into its verb expansion rule. Let's try another one. Should have hidden. Let me get back to my white color. I like that. All right, so should have hidden. So once again, the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to figure out the tense. And it's the tense of the first word, which in this case is should. Well, I can tell here should is the past tense of shall. So I'm going to write down that it's past because that's what it is. If I can just get my pen to stay where I want it to stay. All right. What is this? What's that thing that just happened there? Yeah, get out of here. All right, let's try it again. Sorry, everybody. Something weird happened there. All right, technology. Yeah, there's past. Next thing, a little plus sign. Next thing I'm going to do, I'll get my little check mark up here. Let's be consistent here. Wink. All right, I'm looking for a modal. So now remember, it's optional. You don't have to have a modal. But I do. Here it is. Should. Here's the trick. You always put down your modal in its present tense form. So I'll always write down the present half, which is going to be shall. So I'm going to write the word shall here. All right. If I had would, I'd write will. If I had could, I'd write can. If I have may, I'll write may. But if I have might, I'll write may. All right, you're only going to write down the present form of the modal. Next thing I'm going to look for, check mark, Jeffrey. There we go. Next one I'm going to look for, do I have any form of have? Remember, it could be have, it could be has, it could be had. Well, here it is. Doesn't matter where it is, but if it's somewhere, I get to add this entire structure. So here's have plus en plus. All right, so check. Next thing I'm going to look for, do I have an ing? I don't. There's no ing, so I can skip him. Remember, it's optional. Lastly is my main verb. My main verb is the last verb. It's not should or have, it's this last verb, which is hidden in its base form is going to be the verb hide. Oh, let's get crazy. Let's change over to a color. My favorite is always orange. It's my favorite color. So in this case, gluing it back together. The past of shall is should. So that's what's nice about it. If I would have put the word should here, then I'd say, what's the past of should? Well, there is no past of should, but there's definitely a past of shall. And so therefore, when I write the word shall, it turns into should. All right, remember the tag, like en or ing, those two tags, they always go with the next word. So you always go with this next word, because otherwise, if you add in have plus en, you're left with the word haven. And you wouldn't say should haven hide, which that makes no sense at all. So the tag goes with the next word. En plus hide gives me hidden, and have is just kind of hanging out by himself, which means there he is. Should have hidden. And it works. I'm a genius. Check mark to you. All right, let's try another one. Should have been hiding. All right, this is a big one. Should have been hiding. All right, so we start off with the tense. Tense right up here. It should. Once again, should is past. So let's make sure that we write down past. Then we go with our modal. Do you have a modal? I do. It's the shall should combo, but we put down its present tense. So here's shall. I thought the sound effects would be good. Next I have is a form of have. Absolutely I do. So I get to write down this whole structure. Have plus en. Sometimes I put the little minus sign there to kind of make them look like a little tag. If you want to, you don't have to. All right, next, I'm looking for, do I have any form of ing? I do. Doesn't matter where he is. And even though he's all the way out here, I get to add in this whole structure right here. So I'm going to add in be plus ing. I didn't really give a lot of space there. It looks weird, but we'll just go with it anyway. Be plus. ing, tagline. Good, plus. All right, so once again, that whole structure came down because I had be plus ing. You notice I'm not changing it. I'm writing it literally as be plus ing. I'm writing it literally as have plus em. And lastly is my main verb. My main verb sitting out here, hiding, and its base form is going to be hide. It's a great H, Jeffrey. Look at that. I'm going to slant it like that. All right, so change it over to orange. Let's glue it together, see if it actually works. Because right now I have it as shall, have, past of shall plus have plus en plus be plus ing plus hide. All right, gluing it together. The past of shall is should. Remember, the tag goes with the next word. So you go with him. So have's all by himself. Have. En plus b is been. En plus b is been. Once again, nice sound effect. And then ing goes with hide, gives me hiding, and that gives me should have been hiding. What? That's amazing. Give a big check mark for me. All right. Let's see what's going on. Oh, one more, I think. Sorry about the repetition of donuts in the verb hide. Let's do will be hiding. I now will be hiding the donuts, which sounds future because we think like, okay, that's futuristic because of the word will, but it's not really. Let's talk about it. All right, so come back to my white pen. Tense. Tense is the very first word. So will is the present. Would is the past. So we get to write this one as being present tense. Modal. Check mark. I like that. My modal is will. So I'm going to write it down. And we're going to write it down in its present tense. So will gets to be written. Check. Ooh, this is the first time we don't have any form of have. It's not down there. If it's not there, you don't write it. So scratch it out. Looking for a form of ing. There it is. So we get to write that whole structure down here. So I get to write be plus ing. Main verb is hide again. Let's glue it all back together with our favorite color, orange, everybody. Here we go. The present of will is will. I mean, you're not adding them together. You're not saying will being, because you end up with a stupid verb, will being hide. No one ever says that. So ing goes to the next word. The tag goes to the next word. So that means be's all by himself. That's why he's here. And ing plus hide gives us hiding. This is the verb expansion rule. Mind-blowing, right? All right, so what I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to then try working through your worksheet. On one side, at 1 through 10, it'll basically take a verb and saying, can you find the verb? Can you break it down mathematically? If that's tough for you, start with 11 through 20. And 11 through 20 says, let's take the verb and glue it back together. Let's construct it first and then go back and try to deconstruct it. So some people like doing 11 through 20 first and then going back and doing 1 through 10. Let's see what you can do with those. Oh my goodness gracious. Sorry, everyone. Not sure what's going on. That's the end of the video. Don't even listen anymore. Oh, discard. Get out.